Welcome to Module 5, Part 3. In this part, I will introduce the term suprasegmentals, revisit word stress, and describe sentence stress and how to transcribe it. Up to now, we've mainly described words on a phoneme-by-phoneme basis. Some aspects of speech, however, can only be described relative to the utterance as a whole. We refer to these aspects of speech as suprasegmentals. The prefix supra means above or beyond, so suprasegmentals refers to aspects of speech that go beyond the segment. There are three major categories of suprasegmentals. They are stress, intonation, and timing, which includes juncture. These features may be expressed by relative amplitude or loudness of the speech sounds, the relative pitch of the speech sounds, especially the vowels, and/or the relative duration of the speech sounds. I use the term relative because in order to judge any portion of the utterance as louder or higher in pitch or longer in duration, you need to consider the overall loudness, pitch, or speaking rate at a given time. For example, a particular pitch, let's say 150 Hz, might be a relatively high pitch for a male talker, but a relatively low pitch for a female talker. So the absolute pitch can't tell us about whether a particular word has a relatively high or low pitch, unless we know the average pitch for the sentence. The same goes for intensity and duration. I can't know if a particular syllable is relatively loud or soft unless I know how loud the speaker is talking, because a relatively loud syllable in normal speech might be the same intensity as a relatively soft syllable would be if I were shouting. And a vowel with a relatively short duration when I'm speaking at a normal rate might be the same duration as a relatively long vowel when I'm speaking at a fast rate. As we discussed earlier, the term stress refers to increased prominence of a syllable in a word or sentence and is usually meant to convey that the syllable is more important than others. Stressed syllables in English are typically longer in duration, higher in amplitude or louder, and higher in pitch than the same syllables would be if they were not stressed. The term intonation refers to the use of pitch to convey information about the overall meaning of a sentence, such as whether it is a question or a statement, or to convey grammatical or syntactic information, semantic information, or pragmatic information, such as the mood or attitude of the speaker. Finally, the term juncture refers to the use of relative phoneme durations and/or pauses to give information about phoneme, word, phrase, or sentence boundaries. First, let's revisit word stress. So far, you've only had to identify the primary stressed syllables in words, that is, the strongest syllable in the word. But actually, words can have at least three levels of stress: primary, secondary, and unstressed. The primary stressed syllable in the word is the strongest syllable in the word. We have already discussed primary stress and how to transcribe it phonetically. The primary stressed syllable normally has the highest pitch in the word and is typically louder than the other syllables in the word. However, in English, the stress pattern within a word will tend to alternate between strong and weak syllables, so that there will be one strongest syllable, but some syllables will be weaker than the strongest syllable, but stronger than the other unstressed syllables. For example, in the word institution, the pattern is strong, weak, strong, weak. The third syllable, to, is the strongest syllable and gets primary stress, but the first syllable, in, is stronger than the second and fourth syllables. So the third syllable has primary stress, the first syllable has secondary stress, and the second and the fourth syllables are unstressed. Primary stress is indicated by a small vertical mark above and to the left of the beginning of the stressed syllable, while secondary stress is indicated by a small vertical mark below and to the left of the secondary stressed syllable. Unstressed syllables do not receive a stress mark. Here is the word institution with primary, secondary, and unstressed syllables marked appropriately. For some people, it takes a lot of practice to learn to identify all three levels of syllable stress correctly. While the pattern tends to alternate between strong and weak syllables, there is no hard and fast rule about how many secondary or unstressed syllables a particular word will have. For example, in the word banana, the second syllable has primary stress, and both of the remaining syllables are unstressed. On the other hand, the word potato has one primary stressed syllable, the second syllable, one secondary stressed syllable, the third syllable, and one unstressed syllable, the first syllable. There are a few rules of thumb I can give you, however. First, remember that every word has one and only one primary stressed syllable. Second, unstressed syllables are those with reduced vowels, typically schwa or I. That is, unstressed vowels will be shorter in duration and more centralized than fully articulated vowels. The schwa symbol indicates an unstressed syllable, not secondary stress. So if you mark a vowel as schwa, you are saying that the syllable is unstressed. If the vowel has secondary stress and it has the quality, then you should transcribe it using the turned V symbol, the stressed symbol. In the same way, if you mark a vowel as unstressed and it has the quality, you must transcribe it as schwa. The quality of unstressed vowels is often difficult to identify because the vowel is so short. So, if you are transcribing an unstressed vowel and it is very short and centralized, but you can't decide if it is schwa or another vowel, you will often be safe just transcribing it as schwa. The same contrast between transcription of secondary stress and unstressed versions of the vowels goes for the schwa R versus the stressed version of the vowel with the quality. Use the schwa R, the unstressed only for unstressed syllables, and use the stressed symbol for secondary stress and primary stress when the vowel has the quality. You should normally mark a fully realized vowel, especially a diphthong, that does not get primary stress as having secondary stress, because it is not a reduced vowel. For example, in the word mango, the first syllable has primary stress and the second syllable has secondary stress because the O phoneme is fully realized in the second syllable. However, in the word anger, the first syllable has primary stress and the second syllable is unstressed. The same syllable in a word might have primary or secondary stress depending on how you say it. For example, if I say progressive with an O in the first syllable, then the first syllable has secondary stress. But if I say progressive with vowel reduction in the first syllable, I would transcribe the first vowel as schwa and the first syllable would be unstressed. Again, if you practice, you should be able to hear the difference between the three levels of stress. Pause the recording here and complete exercises 7.6 to 7.9 and review exercises A through D at the end of the chapter. Make sure to check the answers at the back of the book to make sure you understand. If you are having trouble getting the three levels of stress correct, try the exercises again and go back to the first exercises on stress at the beginning of the book.